We will also have Carolyn Stanley and Dominique Randall from unbeaten USC women's soccer. And finally, a true Trojan legend is going to join us, Steve Johnson, now the #2 ranked American in the world. I am Jordan Moore alongside John Jackson and JJ. Before we get to Coach, what went wrong in B-Town?
Oh, man, a little bit of everything. You know, it's funny, every time you have these type of losses, my theory is everybody gets to share. The good thing is everybody gets to share in the blame. And, you know, for the Trojans, that's exactly what happened. I mean, I think that, you know, all the players, you know, obviously have had the film study to sort of recognize what went wrong. But I think the biggest lesson they learned is, hey, when you get out and jump on a team, and, you know, because at one point it was 17-6, and although it wasn't pretty, they were winning. You know, one more touchdown, I think you still put that game really goes the other way for the Trojans. So, you know, it's a learning experience. The good news is it's not in conference play, so the Pac-12 South Championship is still in the front view mirror.
Plenty of season to go to. Let's get to Coach here. Trojans Live is brought to you by BMW. See your Southern California BMW Center today for exceptional offers, or visit SoCalBMW.com. Reminder, if you want to tweet in a question, use the hashtag Trojans Live for Coach. Maybe we'll get to some of those in the second segment with him. Coach, now 2-1 on the season. Boy, last 2 weeks, man, the highs and lows of college football. We've got to experience it here with you. What's sticking in your craw, if anything, the most 3 days later?
Oh, man, it's hard to get the taste out of my mouth, I can tell you that. And that's the hard part of when you have a tough loss like that and then you head into a bye. You don't have that next opponent right away to start focusing on and getting your energy to. We have to live with this one for a little while. And I don't know necessarily if that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, Jordan, I think that for our guys, as we went and had a really hard, tough Tuesday practice for a bye week to get better individually, to get better collectively. But I think the whole thing kind of is still sticking with me. And I don't think it's just one thing. I go round and round for myself individually about specific calls or game management and different things. I think about motivation going into the game for our players. I think about being up 17-6 and were there a couple plays that we could have made that could have really swung it to make it 24-6, and maybe it's a totally different game. So you think about all those things, but the end result is, you know, in the fourth quarter of that game, when we had a chance, I really thought to maybe get back into the fold. We just couldn't make those critical plays at the critical moments. As bad as we were and all the stuff that was going on, we had our chances, and we just didn't make those game-changing plays that you need to make in tight ball games on the road.
You know, Sark, I know in all these games that you lose, you start to reflect, and you look back at, when you see it on film, it looks a little bit different than when it was happening live. Is there anything that, you know, that happened in that game that that at the time you thought was maybe okay, that, you know, in hindsight you should have caught up to, or vice versa, you guys were doing well and at the time it felt like the world was caving in?
Well, you know, I think this. I think Boston College, first of all, I'm gonna talk about their defense. They made it a point to play a lot of man coverage against us, and I think if you would have said coming into a season or coming into a game with the wide receiving core that we have, you're going to play USC man-to-man, you were crazy. Right. They did it. They hung with it, and whether it was the play calls, whether it was the execution, is regardless, they did it and they got away with it. And we never hurt them. And we never hurt them enough to say, get out of this man coverage, get out of loading the box, and to open up the running game. So it was really, that's what made us really choppy offensively. I think on the flip side, defensively, they challenged us with a couple really, I don't want to say they're simple things because they're difficult, but they went to some unbalanced formations. They went to some extra offensive linemen. They went to some fly motion. They went to some fly motion with slide blockers coming back in the other direction, all of which out of the pistol to create running lanes for their quarterback, Tyler Murphy, who we found out was a really athletic guy. Who was a week ago on the show, I said, if there's something that is an issue going into this game, it's Tyler Murphy as he starts to settle in this offense with Boston College. So I think we learned a valuable lesson going into the week as a team. Those things that we work on in walkthroughs, those things that, hey, you never know what your opponent's going to do to you, but when we're in walkthrough, we say, hey, if it's man-to-man, these are the 5 things we're going to go to. If they go to a quarterback run game, this is what we're going to go to. How vitally important those walkthroughs are in preparation, because you don't know. You don't know what your opponent's going to give you. and how important those walkthroughs and those specific individual meetings are in preparation so that when it presents itself, we have our answers ready and we can go out and execute.
Yeah, you brought up, play calling and what you're looking at. I want to get more into that because we don't talk about that a lot on air because there's so much that goes into it and so much film study you did and then adjustments you're making on the field. But what were you seeing as you really tried to establish the run for a good 3 quarters before you flipped the switch and just let Cody go in the 4th? What were you seeing as opposed to what was being executed? Because Cody was saying today that there was something there to be had, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, again, I think everybody, when you win, everybody should get the praise, and when you lose, everybody should be at fault. And that's, unfortunately, in football, the ultimate team sport, a lot of times it doesn't work like that. When you win, the guy that catches a touchdown or throws a touchdown gets all the praise when it took all 11 people and coaches to make that play work. When you lose, unfortunately, sometimes the wrong people get all the fault too. So we needed to execute better in general. We needed a better game plan. That wasn't there. Obviously, the plays we were trying to operate weren't as good. When we felt like we had a good play, the execution wasn't as good as we would have liked as a coaching staff. So I think it all goes together. At the end of the day, this is the ultimate team sport, and as I was going through this ball game and I was calling those plays, and we go back to the Stanford game, I was trying to be very cognizant of our defense and how much Boston College was going to run the football at us and taking care of our defensive front, especially without a Hayes Pillard in the first half, a banged-up Leonard Williams. Hindsight's 20/20. There's probably 7 or 10 plays in that game I would change the call, but that's no different than just about every other game. I go. Just as I critique our players, just as I critique our coaching staff, I critique myself first. And there's probably 7 to 10 play calls I'd love to have back. There's probably 2 or 3 game management calls that I'd love to have back. That the 4th and 2 on our own 48 there early in the 4th quarter, I'd probably go for it. Hindsight's 20/20.
Harbaugh was on that one, JJ. You weren't, man.
I
JJ
said
wants you to punt. Harbaugh was on it.
So, but you know,
but I'm always right.
But those are always, again, and you never know if you're right or wrong until it's always until it's
you
over.
Get stuffed, and then it's a terrible call. That's just the life of a coach.
That is, and you live with your call, and then you take those experiences. You put them in your kind of your piggy bank, and you rely on them down the road, and when you can, you kind of cash that bank out. You shake the change out, and you say, oh, there's that penny again, and this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So it is. I think we had some great learning experiences coming out of this game for our team moving forward, and that's the positive. You're always, as much as there's the negative and got to fix this, got to fix that, all those things, the positive is we're going to be able to lean on so many of these things from this ball game that are going to help us win games in the future, and it could be next Saturday night for all we know against Oregon State.
Now here's the thing that the fans, myself, and everybody's looking at that you might not know even the answer to. You got a USC versus Fresno State team. That's one identity. You got a USC Stanford versus Stanford team. That's another identity. Now you have USC versus Boston College. What is the true USC team that you see at this point after 3 games?
Well, I think this. I think that we had to play 3 different style of games. When you look at what Fresno presented us on both sides of the ball, what Stanford presented us going to the no huddle on offense, and then on what they were doing on defense, with the zone, rolling their zone coverages one direction to another, and then what Boston College gave us with the pistol, the zone read, the old Nevada offense with Colin Kaepernick, and then all the man coverage and the stunts and whatnot up front for us, is that the biggest thing I learned about our team is every Saturday we take the field, we are going to get every team's best shot. And we're going to get things from our opponents that they haven't shown probably all season long, that they've been saving for this game. What is imperative for us is that we give our opponents our best shot every time we take the field. And they have to defend us from a defensive standpoint. They have to block us from an offensive standpoint. And we cannot be the reactive team. And I felt like, especially Saturday, we were trying to react to what Boston College was doing to us instead of us enforcing our will on this is who we are and you have to defend us.
A lot of talking points coming out of this game against Boston College. We got a whole nother segment with Coach Sark coming up here on Trojans Live. Getting into it, you're listening to KFWB.